It's remarkable to me that sometimes I look at the media. I don't put the fans and the media in the same category. Fans are go be crazy. They pay to go see games. Fans short for fanatic. If not for fans, these games aren't as interesting. I mean, when you watch a game and the fans are going crazy, it makes the game better. The aesthetic. Fans should be nuts. They should be socially lubricated. But when it comes to the media and analysts, sometimes I roll my eyes. Are you guys paying attention to this stuff? So Joe Burrow yesterday, they measured his hands, and they're like small, like a 9. And Joe Burrow's laughing about it. Why do you think they test this stuff? Why do you think they test this stuff? Now, Patrick Mahomes came out and supported him because Patrick Mahomes' hands are slightly smaller than average. And everybody's like, well, Patrick Mahomes has small hands. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes has the best arm on the planet. That overcomes lots of shortcomings. He also had a dad who was a pro athlete. So Mahomes is a significantly better athlete than Joe Burrow and has the best football throwing arm in the world and has Andy Reid as his counsel. We know that Joe Burrow is a decent athlete, not special. He now has small hands, and we know he's got an average arm, not great, and has Zach Taylor, who we don't know if can coach, as his counsel. I remember years ago when Vince Young came out, and I was never a big Vince Young fan. I hated his throwing motion. I said he reminds me of Tebow. He wins games. That throwing motion, he'll never be a great pocket passer. He had a very low Wonderlic. And people are like, it's no big deal. And I'm like, well, it's kind of something, or they wouldn't test. I mean, it's. And then everybody say, well, Dan Marino had a low Wonderlic. And I was like, yeah, but Dan Marino had the best arm and release in the history of the league. Folks, sometimes Steph Curry's shooting overcomes the fact that he's small and tiny and doesn't play much defense, and he's not real vertical, and you can push him around, and he's kind of light. If you have world-class arm talent or world-class shooting talent, it can overcome obstacles. But this hand size thing, folks, let's just be honest about it. Joe Burrow is a good prospect. He's not a great prospect. He's a great story, and the media loves stories. Okay, Westbrook was a great story when KD left him. Didn't make him a greater player. He was a great story, and he won the MVP. LeBron was the better player and the MVP of the league. But LeBron's story, we were fatigued. We'd seen him dominate the league for a decade, so LeBron doesn't win MVP. Because we're over the LeBron story, right? I'm not, but most people are. The Westbrook triple-double year, this story wasn't any better player. Just kind of cheated on some rebounds, and nobody else could shoot, and he scored. And so this Joe Burrow thing, it is remarkable to me when we dismiss stuff that matters. It all matters. Arm, maturity, Wonderlic, hand size. It's all college productivity, coachability. It's all something. It all matters. The interview process, heck, we've had people on the couch the last 2 weeks. They're like, that interview process, that's huge. You're like, really? Talking for 7 minutes? They're like, oh, yeah. I mean, I never forget. Johnny Manziel came out, Jameis Winston came out, and Baker Mayfield came out. And I said, they're all really immature in college. Haven't they all been really immature at the next level? Johnny Manziel's out of the league. Baker's been talented but wildly immature with poor judgment, called out his own medical staff. And Jameis Winston's a bakery. He's a turnover machine. That's all judgment. Sam Darnold is the exact quarterback at the Jets as he was at USC. The difference is when he makes those mistakes in the NFL, it's way more punitive. They all get picked off. At USC, he made mistakes, but Utah guys or Oregon State guys didn't pick him off. Joe Burrow was a remarkable story, but he's a good prospect. He's not a special prospect. And by the way, I don't love him making fun of the hands thing. It's a little cocky for me. It's a little too much for me. I really like the way Tua is handling all of this. Tua's got a medical crisis on his hands, and every time you talk to Tua, he's just humble. He understands the concerns. This is not the end of the world for Joe Burrow, but the idea that all of this stuff doesn't matter a little. Of course it matters. By the way, I saw a stat this morning. If you don't think, by the way, Cincinnati is a cold, wet, windy area. It'd be different if he's playing in a dome, maybe, behind a great offensive line. But he's going to be playing behind a bad offensive line in a wet, cold division. Hand size doesn't matter, gripping the ball. In the last decade in the NFL, 3 players have had concerns about hand size. Chad Henne, Ryan Tannehill, and Jared Goff. Well, in the last decade, those are the small hand guys. Goff has been the best, and most of you don't like him as much as I do. And he does have a fumble issue at times. So, and the other thing about Joe Burrow, he did say this yesterday. So here's some sound Joe Burrow at the Combine about the Bengals. So that just guarantees, that's fine. That just guarantees, though, that he will go to the least talented roster in his division. Forget the AFC. Forget the NFL. In his division, without question, he will now go to easily the least talented roster. He is saying that this morning, and good for him. That's fine. As we said, we figured he would go to Cincinnati. It takes a lot of courage to bail on your home state. Cincinnati doesn't have a history of wanting to negotiate and move around in the draft. They're going to draft him and say, you're coming or not. But, this idea that you just dismiss hand size or you dismiss judgment in college, you dismiss the one word means nothing. It all is a story. It's a fabric, and you come out, and it matters. And the size 9 hands matters more for Joe Burrow than Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes throws a football better than any human on the planet. And hand size can be like Steph Curry. When you're the best in the world at something, shooting threes, it can overcome other issues. So Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones' son, said yesterday, I haven't spoken to Dak Prescott's agent since September. It's interesting about this. Stephen Jones basically came out there and said, we haven't talked much about this stuff. I do think there's 2 things interesting here. We're getting to a point in the NFL, we're reaching a saturation point in the NFL where almost all of these first round and early second round quarterbacks, they're working. The bust rate has plummeted. They're all working. They're taking their college offenses, bringing them to the NFL. They all work. Arizona had a quarterback issue. Well, they solved it. And New York Giants had a quarterback issue. Well, they solved it. And as long as Brady signs for 2 more years, he will in New England, and Breeze signs for a year or 2 in New Orleans, he will. That'll happen. We're getting to a point, folks, we're running out of teams that Dak could go to. The Cowboys are now essentially negotiating against themselves, which is bad business, especially in a salary cap business. This year, after the draft, because now Miami's going to get a quarterback, Cincinnati's going to get a quarterback, the Chargers are going to get a quarterback. My guess is Indianapolis is going to get a quarterback. Carolina, where they fall in the draft, they may play Cam for another year or 2. Roll your eyes. They may tank a little bit, move, and not just depend on Kyle Allen and see what happens next year in the draft. We also have 2 stars next year, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson, Justin Fields, Ohio State, who are going to go number 1 and 2 in the draft. Mark it down. It's done. So between all the quarterbacks now, and I'm not counting Jordan Love, who I think is a franchise quarterback, or Jacob Eason, who I'm up in the air on, but he'll make it in the NFL. We are reaching a saturation point. There's just not many teams out there. If you go to next year, you know who you're looking up right now? Next year, you got basically Washington's a little wobbly, Chicago's a little delusional, and Jacksonville. And that's about it. So on the Dak thing, are the Cowboys simply negotiating against themselves? Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.